Hello, everyone. I'm Joel Bouchard, and this is the Letchworth Community Access podcast. Welcome to our first episode. And by sheer coincidence, our first guest is the LCA director, Jules Hoepting. What are the chances of that?
What are the chances? Yes, so I am the director of LCA, and I'll be talking about what that means and what we're doing with the podcast in a bit.
Yeah. So we'll get to that. But let's start out. So the podcast, the hope is, right, to have people from the Letchworth area on and to sort of get their background, talk about them personally, and then kind of the interesting projects that they're involved with. So we'll follow that same format here. And I'll ask the question that I think I'm going to ask everybody this, because it's just an interesting question and it's different from person to person. But are you a native of the Letchworth area?
I am not. So I just say I am from Western New York because to me that is the most authentic answer. I'm actually a dual Canadian American. I was born in Canada. My mom's family is in Canada, and then she moved for a fantastic job opportunity when I was 1.5. So she works for Cornell Cooperative Extension in vegetable growing crops research, specifically onions. So I like to say I'm in the United States because of onions, which is true. And I went to elementary school, middle school in Albion, went in Orleans County, then went to Oakfield for high school in Genesee County, went to university in Fredonia in Chautauqua County, and now I'm in Perry in Wyoming. So just kind of enough years in each spot that Western New York just seems like the most authentic, best answer.
Yeah. So you've been all over Western New York. That's great, though. So yeah, Cornell Cooperative Extension. I was wondering about that because when before we went to record the episode, I was asking you, what are some questions you want to be asked? And you're saying that, okay, yeah, well, am I a native? And you're like, I'm here because of onions. How does that factor into it? So
yep.
Makes more sense.
Yep.
Cornell Cooperative Extension, that's a great place. I've been there a couple of times. I think usually bringing in weird bugs.
Oh.
Look at hey, what is this thing? And they're like, it's a pseudo-scorpion. You go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
They live around here. So it's a great resource. But
there's all sorts of specialties.
So you described how you winded up in the area. How do you wind up in Perry specifically?
So that was for a job I got with Letchworth Gateway Villages. So that is a nonprofit, and it works with 10 communities across 4 counties, kind of forming a region, the Genesee Valley region. So our front end platform is called exploregeneseevalley.com, which has some social media as well. And it's trying to promote the area through the lens of outdoor recreation. So Letchworth or Genesee Valley Greenway State Park and other wonderful opportunities that we have here, and then tying it into the local communities and their history and their small businesses, and just hoping to boost the economy through the natural resources and small town gems that we have.
Nice. Yeah. So do you want to talk about some of that? Why do you enjoy the area so much?
So I think it's really fantastic to move somewhere through the lens of we're going to look for the gems in this area. I think the world is so much more exciting when you choose to look at it with wonder instead of disdain or think that things are mundane. And just kind of the more I explore, the more I appreciate the area. I like its affordability. I like how quickly I can get to a city if I need something more specialized, like healthcare or something like that. And then I also like that I can get to the middle of nowhere really quickly.
Yeah.
I love that Letchworth State Park is literally in my backyard right now. For those of you who are listening and cannot see, there is a mural from Humphreys Overlook in the park, which is just a phenomenal view in person. So that's an obvious gem that nearly 1 million people come to every year. But then there's a lot of smaller ones and lesser known ones. Like we got our Silver Lake and the sea serpent folklore and all that. I'm a huge fan of the Genesee Valley Greenway State Park, which isn't directly in Perry, but I think of it as the backbone of a region. It was a former canal, turned railroad, turned trail. I also like to joke I got my job because of canals. I got bored during the pandemic, did the entire Erie Canal, did the whole Genesee Valley Canal, did the whole Ohio and Erie Canal. they kept leading to each other. So
during
it's an odd thing to do, but it's an interesting perspective to see how things tie together.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, you walked a lot of trails, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, I've seen you take a lot of photos. Is that how you got your job? Was like somebody saw all the photos you were taking on your hikes and was like, hey, you'd be a good fit for
So I interned for Parks and Trails New York, which is one of the organizations that helps run the Erie Canalway Trail. And they were also one of the partners with Letchworth Gateway Villages for the Genesee Valley Trail Town Initiative. So advisor was like, hey, there's an opening. This looks like some things that you kind of know how to do.
Nice.
So.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's a great background, and it demonstrates, through Letchworth Gateway Villages, right, sort of the interconnectedness of the local municipalities, which, again, is part of what Letchworth Community Access is about, right, is looking at the interconnectedness of the local regions and how everything kind of works together and bring a spotlight to some of the interesting people and the interesting businesses and things. So, I don't think we kind of covered this earlier. How long have you been here? Have you seen the region develop much since you have been here, or has it been too short of a period of time?
I think it's too short for me. I've been here for a year and a half, but I've heard many stories about how, if you came to Perry 20 years ago, it looked nothing like this. Versus now when I drive through, it's like, oh, this looks like the term that they like to use is curiously hip, which I think is very suitable. So I won't try to word that differently because I like it.
Yeah, I think that it's pretty accurate. And so I am a Perry native, right? So I've lived here my whole life, and for sure, walking down Main Street or anywhere, like even the Silver Lake Trail and stuff, I can remember when you'd have to bushwhack through there with a machete. You couldn't just walk down the nicely manicured trails and things, and yeah, all the storefronts and everything. So there's been a lot of development over the course of my lifespan, but there's also a lot of exciting projects on the horizon, right? With the DRI projects and things being put in motion. So I'm expecting over the next 5 years, we'll probably see even more development than we've seen in the past 20 or 25. So a lot of exciting things on the horizon. Let's talk about LCA. Can you give us a brief overview of what Letchworth Community Access is?
Yes. So LCA, Letchworth Community Access, was formerly known as Letchworth Cable Access, and it was quite literally a cable station covering the greater Letchworth area, which is kind of what we think of as eastern side of Wyoming County, to kind of branch those different towns to each other through regional identity. And as you know, audience, and you as well, cable isn't so much as popular as it used to be.
It's not?
It's not. So it's no longer an actual cable station. And I came on as trying to develop it into something new. So I wanted to get cable out of the name, but I wanted to kind of keep the acronym. So community, focusing on the community and different aspects of it, whether it's, I've made some videos about like, what does the tree board do? And what does the snow plowing crew do versus what we're kind of getting into now, just talking to interesting individuals and their perspectives on the area.
Yeah. So that sounds like a real smart transition. You kept the acronym intact, LCA. But yeah, cable, pulled the plug on cable, right? We're focusing on the community. And if you haven't seen them before, Jules has done a lot of really good short videos on different things that are going around the town. Going to continue those into the future, and probably we're hoping to integrate them with the podcast a little bit, right? So if we have some people on that we're interviewing, hopefully we can kind of take you some other places and do some short videos looking at their life sort of in the context of where they're at. Since we know that most of you are probably listening to this versus seeing it, right? We do have the video feed, so if you want to see us or a guest in the future that or if you're on and you want to see the interview, you have access to it. But if you're driving in the car or doing something else, you're probably listening to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to podcasts, right? So if it's just that audio component, it's nice to have a shorter video component that kind of ties the two together. So that'll be something we'll work on in the future. But so we mentioned you're the director of LCA, right? So you wanted to give us sort of an overview of what that entails?
Well, moving forward, we're hoping to do more with a podcast, which this would most likely be the first episode of. And the thing about video is it is a fantastic medium, but it takes a lot of like energy and bandwidth to produce. And there are a lot of things where it's just tricky. So if someone wants to talk about an event that hasn't happened yet, I'm not sure how I'm going to show that until after the event has happened. Or if someone wants to talk about something that happened in the past and they didn't take a photo or video. Also not sure how I'm going to show that in a video or just show like one image for a minute and talk over it or something of that sort. So I just think being able to have conversations and listen to people explain things can be very useful in a lot of situations. And it also allows us to dive deeper into topics. So that's what we were hoping for. And I think also some people are just camera shy and maybe you just have to listen to them and not see them might be
and so
a little more welcoming.
Right. So that was great. You covered the goal of the podcast really well and also highlighted the flexibility of it, right? So part of the format with the LCA podcast is going to be a little bit of variability, right? Sometimes we'll have the video component. Some people, like you said, some people don't want to be on video, but they're interesting. We want to hear what they have to say. So it'll be audio only. Some episodes will be short, right? Because some people aren't too talkative, right? They just want to answer a few questions. Other ones, we might have people that want to tell a story or we want to go over the history of something. It might be in depth, right? So there might be episodes that are 10 or 15 minutes long. There might be some that are an hour long or longer, depending on how it goes. There might be some that have a video component. There might be some that are audio only. The video component might evolve in the future, right? Maybe we have the ability to do a 2-camera setup, get fancy. Maybe we have the ability to visit guests at their place. So we might not always be sitting in front of the mural. We might be in some other places. So there'll be a little bit of variability, but the goal, right, like what you said is, with the videos provide this great sort of immersion into what's going on in the community and providing us a snapshot of those things. But it does. It's very work intensive. It's hard to get things professionally sliced together. Whereas a podcast, right, it's just a natural conversation, right? It's just you and me sitting here talking. It provides for a little bit of a deeper insight, a little bit more depth than what you can get with a shorter video. So, I guess that brings us to the last question, which is how can people keep up with the LCA podcast?
How can people keep up? So we have a YouTube page, a Facebook page, and an Instagram page, and they are all Letchworth Community Access, super easy. And then we also have an email, lcapodcast@outlook.com. And we have ideas for who we want to interview. But we're always welcome to hear more ideas. And I meant to comment on this earlier too. I think our true objective with this podcast is to make people realize that they do live in an interesting area, and appreciate it more.
Right. Yeah. No, it's like we were mentioning earlier, as a Perry native, right? I remember 20 or 30 years ago and walking down Main Street and seeing a bunch of empty storefronts, right? And walking over different places and, it's a lot has happened since then that people in the area can be excited about, right? And I don't think it's just Perry. I think it's the area as a whole. But there's also that component. I also remember Letchworth Cable Access, right? And I remember watching the cable TV show and seeing people getting interviewed and going, oh, wow, that's somebody that my dad knows, or, listening to somebody's story and going, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that this person lived here, right? And that's some of what we're hoping to capture with the podcast is providing some coverage of these people that are interesting, that are doing cool things, that are right in the community that you might not know about, and to highlight the progress and the way that you mentioned it, the gems, right? The things that are great about our area that you might not be exposed to otherwise, right? So that's the hope with the podcast. Like Jules said, you can check us out on all those different platforms. The email address is there. if you would like to be interviewed, or if you know somebody interesting that should be interviewed, feel free to contact us, right? And we'll reach out to them. And I think that pretty much covers it.
Thank you for listening to or watching the Letchworth Community Access podcast. If you're interested in seeing more, you can like us, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And the name on all of those is Letchworth Community Access. And if you know someone who would make a good interviewee for a podcast, or if you think you'd be a great interviewee, contact us at lcapodcast@outlook.com. Thanks again.